Hello, and welcome to Ask Me About K-Pop, the essential guide for recent converts and seasoned fans alike. My name is Shannon. I'm one of the hosts of the program, and the other host is my best pal, Angelica. Angelica, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Ready to, get into this stuff that I barely understand and I'm probably not qualified to talk about, but it's something that we've been promising we'd talk about since, our second episode, so we have to do it.
Yep.
Today we are getting into the real fun of a contract dispute.
Oh, yeah.
Because K-pop idols, this is, this is business. It's not just people hey, we should get a band together and getting on stages. There's there's a lot involved. So people are signing a lot of paperwork. And there have been a couple of famous cases that we'll get into where some big idols were just not cool with the contracts that they signed anymore and wanted to change them or get out of them. And it causes real big stinks.
It causes a lot of hubbub because all these companies have a lot of legalese and there's just so much that goes into the creation of every K-pop group, from contracts to the training, the investments. It is not an easy web to untangle once you decide that you don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Right, exactly. Because it's this is all over my head. I work in a creative industry and I know nothing about nothing. So I shouldn't, it's all just guys in suits decide all of these things. But K-pop idols are a product. They're people. Of course, they're human beings first. And I think that's what a lot of these come down to. But on paper and to a company, they're a product. And
right.
So
because the company is investing, they're pouring all of this time and money into the creation of this group. And by the time that group actually debuts, the company's already made significant investments of time and money and staff and production and all of these things into this group. And so then once the group actually debuts, from on paper, the company side of it is well, now you have to pay us back. You owe us for everything we put into making you.
Right.
And so that, of course, is where things get a little bit dicey because then it's well, you don't own me.
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So I guess we should just get into it with some concrete examples. And the first, or it probably wasn't the first, but the biggest deal contract dispute, ostensibly ever, was TVXQ. So in July 2009, so this was 10 years after their debut, or no, now I'm upset that I don't know that.
I don't know when they debuted.
They debuted in 2003, so seven years, which is usually just the K-pop curse year.
That's true.
Interestingly enough, but it was 10 years into a lot of their contracts because they had been signed as trainees.
Right.
So, 3 members of TVXQ, Jaejung, Yuchun, and Junsu, they submitted a lawsuit to the Seoul District Court to say that we do not believe that the contract we signed with SM Entertainment is valid, and we want it nullified.
Did they say why they thought it was invalid?
Yes, they basically stated that a 13-year contract is excessive. And that it had been changed without their knowledge and consent, and that their earnings weren't being fairly distributed, and that just basically that it wasn't nothing about it was fair. They'd signed it when they were kids and whatever. But also they knew going in that, or part of the lawsuit was that they had probably tried to just say, hey, SM, we want to leave. And they were if you violate your contract, right now, you're going to owe us more money than you could possibly imagine for breaking this contract. So then their choice was then to sue to make the contract null and void.
Right.
Basically. So this was a huge deal. TVXQ was and is
one
enormous.
Of the biggest groups ever.
So this was it was a shock to fans. It was a shock to the industry.
And this was at the point where they held the Guinness Book World Record for largest fan base. So 5-member TVXQ was peak K-pop in a lot of ways at this point in time.
Yeah. So there was just a lot a lot of different feelings and stories and stuff out there. And Yuno and Changmin, like, very quickly, or by November. So the lawsuit was filed the end of July, but in November, like, they both released their statements saying, like, we are on SM's side. Like, we've been doing we've lived the exact same lives as the other three. And like, as painful as it is for us that all of this is happening, like, we don't feel like they do.
Yeah. We don't agree, and we're not leaving.
Yeah. So, and another thing about it that I thought was really interesting when I was trying to find, like, the timelines of this is that, like, everybody's dad, like, everyone who was involved, their dad, like, wrote a letter to the press. I don't know why, but, like,
That's a pattern.
Changmin's dad is a teacher, and so it was like a very dressing down teacher letter of being like, I have taught my son and my students over the last 27 years about whatever, and the behavior being exhibited by these other three members is against everything I ever taught my son, and was like a very shamey, like, teacher thing. But, like, both Changmin and Yuno's dads were claiming that this was 100% about money, because they were being offered a ton. Like, they were huge in Japan.
Yeah.
So they
Still are. Absurdly famous in Japan.
But they had, like, exclusive contracts with SM and SM Japan and whatever. And there was something with a cosmetics company that, like, probably had offered them a bunch of money, and, like, it was against their contract to take it. So both Yuno and Changmin's dads were like, they're just trying to get all of this money off of these things. And then the cosmetic company sued for defamation, was like, Jesus, we don't want to get dragged into this. So it was a big old deal. The court originally sided with the other three and said, like, we're ruling in favor of them. Like, they can leave. They don't have to keep up with this contract.
Stay if they don't want to.
SM said this lawsuit is fraudulent, and we're filing an injunction to stop all of this. A year later, their Japanese agency, AVEX, said TVXQ is broken up. All the members are going solo. We're done with TVXQ as a Japanese group. And then a week later, the other three debuted as JYJ under a new agency called CJES Entertainment, like, effectively, like, shutting out Yuno and Changmin. And, like, that was the nail in the coffin. Like, JYJ is real, and TVXQ. I mean, people thought it would be done. It's weird to look at now how successful they've been able to be as two, but at the time, no one knew what was going to happen.
Well, and didn't they state, like, before JYJ debuted, they stated TVXQ was disbanded. So it was like all of the members are going to go off on a separate thing, and so it's almost like like JYJ debuted, and then SM was like, oh yeah, well, here are these guys. Like, they're still TVXQ without you. And I mean, they're hugely successful as just a duo of TVXQ. I love TVXQ as just a duo.
Yeah.
But
I was, like, away from it at the time. Like, I mean, I wasn't into K-pop yet, so I don't have any personal memories of this, but, like, from what I've heard from, like, hardcore TVXQ fans, this is just, like, something that people never got over, because there were obviously people, like, I kind of can't imagine what this is like, because of course there were people who were, like, JYJ biased, or, like, and what do you do when your group like splits up like this? And then apparently there were also, like, there was like a faction of the TVXQ fans that just, like, refused to accept either group. They were like, TVXQ is a 5-member group.
And so TVXQ doesn't exist anymore.
Pretty much, because, like, I don't buy this this 2-member thing isn't TVXQ, and JYJ isn't TVXQ. So effectively, TVXQ is done to me. So it was very, very odd. The whole thing ended up taking, like, 4 years. In November 2012, at voluntary arbitration, which means, like, both parties, like, went to court on their own and nobody had to get, like, arraigned. And they mutually agreed to just terminate all of the contracts between all the parties, and that no one was going to interfere in anybody's stuff ever again. The end. But, like, that was like 3 or 4 years of just, like, craziness.
And it's almost like both sides need to exhaust themselves before they're willing to be like, okay, can we just, like, go our separate ways? Like, you do your thing and we'll do ours. But I am intrigued by the settlement because I looked up the EXO. What am I saying? I looked up the EXO lawsuits. And so and like I'll get into them in a minute, but like most of them, SM like always had sort of a last like additional stipulation. And so like SM kind of like came out pretty well in all of those lawsuits. So they didn't have any addendum like to be like, okay, but if you ever promote in Korea, like you would have to be under SM or something like that. Like
I feel
there
like
weren't
they
any
didn't,
additional stipulations.
Not that I could find, but I also don't know if they had to, because from what I gathered, this whole thing just put such a bad taste in everybody's mouth that like JYJ was kind of done in Korea. Like they were famous in Japan and they were going to get money in Japan, and like they're still doing their thing in Japan to this day.
But they don't promote in Korea.
They really don't promote in Korea because I think in that sort of like nationalist way, like people might have seen them as just like siding with Japan and like, why don't they want to be Korean pop stars? Like, why is the Japanese money so important to them or whatever? And I don't know, it was just like big entertainment news that got to be like stretched out for years. So, but I don't know. I mean, the members of JYJ, like I've seen them all like on TV and stuff before, but like several things that I read today were just saying that like JYJ got dragged through the mud the hardest through all of that and like never really like recovered in Korea from the fallout of all of it.
Well, that's too bad. That must be difficult because I believe none of them are non-Korean idols, right? They're all local Korean idols. So that's tough. They had to leave their home.
Yeah. But one of them is a really bad person, so I like don't feel that
I literally know nothing about them. TVXQ is 2 for me. So.
Yeah. So
that's all I care about.
So I guess it's time to go through this EXO
bonanza,
saga, which I'm excited to talk about because I lived through this, so I like remember all of it.
Yeah, and because this is largely the reason that I personally refused to get involved in EXO or like to learn anything about them when I was first learning about K-pop, because this was like fresh. Like Chris and Luhan had just left and everyone was really upset about it for a variety of reasons and in a variety of ways, and the fandom was all at Twitter, and I was just like, you know what? I'm not gonna. There's too many of you. There's too much drama. I'm not into it. But so anyway, what happened was EXO, obviously, you guys know, is originally a 12-member group, debuted with 2 different factions, EXO-M, EXO-K, and was
4
originally
Chinese members, 8. Oh, math.
8. Yes. 8. That is correct. 8. 8 Korean members, 4 Chinese members, 2 groups, 6 each. One group always produced and promoted songs in Mandarin, the other in Korean. And then they like eventually debuted as one unit. But initially they were promoted separately. Yes.
Things.
They were 2 separate groups. And I emphasize that now because that will come up later when we talk about the details of the lawsuits. So 2014, after they came out with Overdose, Chris sued to terminate his contract in May, and then Luhan followed suit in October. It wasn't until the following year, in 2015, after they came back with Love Me Right, that Tao, being absent due to many injuries, he was like kind of on a weird hiatus from the group promotional activities. And then it came out that he was also suing to terminate his contract in August of 2015. So like 2 years, about 6 months in between, like each member was sort of dropping like flies. So I guess just dive right in. Start with Chris.
Yeah, so the Chris one is first.
Chris is first. All 3, I think it's worthy of noting that all 3 idols did use the same law firm. Just an interesting tidbit that they're all represented by the same people.
And all 3 of these, we can talk about it, but all 3 of these were people reacted to all 3 of them extremely differently.
But so Chris started first, right? SM claims to have been taken aback by Chris. So when Chris sued to terminate his contract, SM claims that they like never saw it coming, and so they countersued him for infringing the rights of the EXO members and SM, and for betraying the trust of the company and the members. So they were like immediately not going to have it, and like threw him under the bus right away. And so Chris came back and he said that actually the reason that he was trying to nullify his contract was because SM had forced him to leave and had been like keeping him on the sidelines and like wasn't allowing him to be to promote in certain ways, that he was like mistreated and neglected, and that eventually that mistreatment and neglect impacted his health. And he even brought in a medical diagnosis of something called myocarditis, which is a heart condition. And so that was his initial claim in 2014. I'd like to point out that in an interview in 2017, he claimed that the reason he left was because he didn't have the freedom to make the music he wanted. So it was a very different story now.
Yeah, now he's like, I didn't want to be in a dumb boy band.
Yeah, so like now he says that it's because he didn't like the music that EXO was making, and he would have rather been in like on his own. And so eventually, and it did take like many years for this to finally be settled, but eventually the settlement they came to was that he would only be under SM management in Korea and in Japan, but outside of those two countries, he was free to like make whatever music with whomever company he wanted. Reactions to this?
The fans hated his guts. Like, people were not like, I mean, of course, there were like Chris stans who were very upset, but for the most part, people were like, good, let him go. Like, how dare he betray EXO like this? And then honestly, like, and there were just like lots of pictures of him standing 3 feet away from all of them. And honestly, like when we got into EXO like a year and a half ago, we started watching their reality show from when there were 12 of them.
EXO Showtime.
And within the first 3 minutes, I was like, I hate Chris. He does not want to be here. No. He has the worst attitude. Like, he sucked. I'm sorry. He sucked.
He just always had, like, I will say that there were... I will say in his defense that like there were certain moments of EXO Showtime where he had moments where he was endearing, or he clearly had fun, or like
where he would let himself have fun, but he would go into things
genuine,
like, I refuse to have fun right now.
There were many moments where he had genuine fun, and that was obvious. But yes, he went in with the attitude of like, this isn't where I want to be, this isn't what I want to do. I do wonder how much of that was like of his own like doing, and how much of it was maybe like influenced from like his parents
again,
or something.
People's
like,
with this as well, everyone's dad had something to say about it.
Yeah. I'll definitely bring up dads when we start talking about Tao, but I feel like Chris's dad also said something along the lines of like, they never he basically came out with like, my son deserved better than to be in EXO, and like my SM never treated my son like the star that he is, or whatever. And so part of me in watching EXO Showtime always wondered like, well, I wonder how much of it is like Chris actually being this like cranky, arrogant teen, and how much of it is Chris being like a teen who's hearing from his dad that he deserves better, and was like thrown into this group where he was like promised to be a star, but then he was one of 12. You know what I mean? I'm sure that there's so many layers to it that made it difficult for him to like, you know, but it always felt like he, from an outsider perspective, I agree with you in that it always seemed like Chris was detached.
Yeah.
In a way, like he was not giving it 110% the way that the other members were.
No,
for
totally.
sure. And I would say that like Luhan and Tao, I never felt that way about the two of them. Like they were there in it to win it.
I got very upset when we watched Showtime how attached I got to Luhan and Tao, because I was like, no, this is not okay. But like, no, I have no warm feelings for Chris. He was kind of funny in that Vin Diesel movie, but whatever.
Yeah, no
what
warm
movie
feelings
was
for
that?
Chris.
Triple X all the way.
Triple H, Triple X.
Something.
Xander.
The Return of
Xander Cage. Yeah.
Chris plays like a DJ,
and he kills someone with a pair of headphones.
Yeah. So whatever. He figured it out. That was the
only reason I wanted to watch that movie, but.
I feel like that's why I feel like I feel fine being like, whatever, Chris, like you got out, like he's doing his thing. It's not like he's like destitute now. His life wasn't ruined.
He's making money. Fine. He's also like kind of infuriating to listen to and watch. Like I find him obnoxious.
But we do get that hey, yo, what's up? That like famous, that famous EXO clip of Chandra being like, hey, Chris. And he's like, hey, yo, what's up? That's the best. Anyway. So that was Chris's departure.
So then later that year, like I said, Chris filed his lawsuit in May of 2014. Just a few months later in October, Luhan then filed to nullify his contract as well. He claimed his contract was unfair, and he also filed additional lawsuits for, quote, SM's embezzlement and professional neglect. And the claims of embezzlement were interesting because, so what happened was in the 2 years since their debut, Luhan had only been paid about $8,400 US, which is about 10 million won. But they were never given any statements or breakdowns as to where that money came from. And so there was no way for them to know if it was the accurate amount, if he was paid what he was supposed to be paid. SM claimed that they were paying him appropriately, but there was just like, basically the lawsuit was like, look, you guys were sketchy about this payment, and that's why we're questioning it, because initially the members were supposed to be paid once every 6 months. They ended up only being paid once a year, and because they were just given this lump sum, and they weren't given like, you know, you get a pay stub and you get like all of the breakdowns of what your taxes are and blah, blah, blah. Like they were never given that breakdown of where the money came from. So they didn't know if that figure was the right amount. So like I said, he also used the same law firm as Chris, and they filed, or they added in to their lawsuit, they emphasized in this one as well, that SM had discriminated against XOM, and they had provided more opportunities for XOK to be promoted, and they didn't provide any financial support for XOM members during their points of inactivity. SM claimed, just like during the Chris lawsuit, shock over this lawsuit. They claimed to be surprised, and they also claimed that they had been in the middle of organizing and scheduling future activities for Luhan, because they said that he had come to the company and said that he was interested in focusing on solo activities in China over being in EXO. And so they were like, what? But we were like in the middle of doing this for you. Like, why would you leave us?
Yeah.
So their take on it was like they believed that the lawsuit was purely for personal gain, and that he and Chris had just used EXO to gain popularity for themselves very quickly, and then now that they were super popular all around the world, they wanted to like cut and run and make their own money on their own. And that basically they wanted to split without any regard for their company, their contract, or their members. So again, sort of like throwing Luhan under the bus and being like, no, he's being ridiculous.
Right.
Eventually, the settlement for Luhan was that they actually didn't officially like nullify the contract per se, because he has to pay. Their original contract was until 2022, and that date is still in place for Luhan. So for Luhan and Tao, which I'll talk about in a minute, but so Luhan has to pay a percentage of all of his profits, like anything that he does to make himself money, a percentage of that, I believe it's 20%, goes to SM until the year 2022, because that's when his contract originally expired. But he is free to manage himself or to work with anyone outside of Korea and Japan. So basically, it's like if you do anything in Korea or Japan, you have to be under SM management. If you do anything else, SM gets 20% of the profits.
Wow.
Yeah. But I will say, I don't feel bad for Luhan at all, because last year he made $33 million US.
Yeah, no.
US
rich.
dollars.
He's rich as hell, and
he's fine.
He is also feisty. It's really funny because he was like, because I was looking today, like, because I wanted to try to remember, I was going back into old archives and reading the comments from like the days that these things dropped to try to remember what and everybody was like, oh, my precious baby Luhan, my sweet, sweet Luhan. How could anybody ever do anything to my Luhan? And you Google him now, and it's like him and his girlfriend are like drunk and smoking in bars and yelling at paparazzi. And like, he doesn't give any more fucks, like, at all. And he's like not the tiny, sweet baby that everyone thought he was back then, which is so funny. But like this one, from what like the fans were weirdly understanding, because I think as part of Luhan's statement is that he said that he told, like, it was somehow out in the wind that he told the other members that he was, so they were like, well, Chris just blindsided them, and Luhan told them, like, the sweet boy he is, so if he wants to go home, then he should go home.
And the reason that the fans had those impressions is because other members did come out and make statements. So, like, when Chris left, Tao was really upset by it, and like he made statements about how he was like really disappointed that Hyung had never gone and like talked to him about it or whatever. So he was like felt very betrayed and like related that to the public, and so that I think helped in like vilifying Chris.
Yeah.
But Luhan, Lay, I remember posted like a goodbye photo of like him, and Luhan was like, "Goodbye, Hyung. Like, I support you in all of your decisions. Like, I'm sad to see you go, but I love you."
Yeah.
So I think that like, and maybe there is some kernel of truth to it, in that like after everything happened with Chris, like maybe Luhan did go to the members and was like, "Look, you guys, like this is happening. Like obviously we have to talk about it." And I'm sure that the members, like we've mentioned many times, like these groups live together for the most part. EXO definitely did, and so I'm sure after Chris decided to leave, all the members got together and they were like, "Okay, so like anybody else want to leave? Like what's going on?"
Yeah.
I'm sure that all the other members just like turned in unison to the Chinese members and were like, "What about you guys? You gotta leave?"
Another thing that's really interesting to look at from here in the present is after Luhan left, when there were just 2 members missing, everybody thought they might try to replace them.
Yes.
Because at the time, the EXO-K and EXO-M were still such strong entities of themselves that they were like, well, what about EXO-M? Like, they're going to have to they're going to need 2 more members, right? Yeah. But no, they eventually just...
No, they basically just dissolved EXO-M and they made it all one group. And I only say that disappointingly because I'm an EXO-M stan. Whatever.
And that's fair. That's fair.
Anyway.
So that was Luhan, but can I just jump in before we get to Tao, before we leave 2014, just because I think it's worth noting that like 2014 was like a lot of people remember it as like the worst year in K-pop because like a lot of crazy stuff happened. Like a lot of crazy stuff that was outside of this. But just on the topic of company drama, I'm just going to list real quick. We might be able to get back to these another day. But these are other things that happened in 2014. Sully's forced hiatus from FX. Jessica was kicked out of SNSD. Block B sued and left their company over not being paid. AOA and boyfriend said FNC had never paid them. Busker stated publicly that after selling millions of records, they had never seen a dime. And BAP sued, saying that they had made $10 million, but had only been paid $400 a month. So it was just kind of like there was just this wave, like I think probably started by Chris, of all of these idols kind of like deciding that they weren't going to be quiet anymore about the way that things were being run, and they like made a big stink about it. And we can get to like how that has all, worked out here in the present, but we should get back to EXO. I just wanted, before we get to 2015, I just wanted to note that 2014 was like
that like Chris and Luhan were the tip of the iceberg for 2014 when it comes to like K-pop struggles.
Yes.
But one of the reasons we're not going into a lot of the cases that Shannon just mentioned is because they weren't necessarily contract disputes, and there was more of just like AOA claimed that they had never been paid, but they didn't sue their company.
Yeah,
about it.
they were just making
publicly
it public,
said like
shaming.
Hey,
them.
well, this is what's happening. Yeah, and that's really like. Again, I think that, like I mentioned in last week, I think that falls sort of more under, like, the economics of K-pop, and so maybe it's, like, a different discussion. So we'll only focus on, like, the legalities of the contracts. So that takes us to 2015.
April.
Yes, April 2015. Tao. Poor Tao. Like, it is true that he probably has suffered the most injuries in all of EXO. He is like a martial artist, and so as such he was responsible for a lot of like tricks and flips and like things in their choreography, and so even from their debut he had multiple injuries like throughout their promotions.
Right.
And in 2015 like he was injured. He did suffer an injury during Love Me Right, and so he wasn't in a lot of the Love Me Right promotions because he was injured. And during this time, his father posted a letter online stating that like his son was, you know, being abused and neglected, that he was being mistreated, and basically the point of the letter was like a father's plea.
It's kind of a beautiful letter. Like there's a part in the middle where he's like, I always told my son that he could do anything, and like, is this my fault? Have I pushed him to this because he needs these dreams? Like
it's really heartbreaking and heartfelt. Like I'm not saying this to be like his dad got in the middle of it. Like no. I mean, his dad posted a letter and it was very heartfelt. I don't think the dad was doing it as like part of some sort of like shady ploy or whatever. Like I don't think it was a publicity grab. But his dad posted this heartfelt letter basically like begging the public to demand his release from his contract. And so he was just like, I just want my son to come home. Following this letter, Tao goes on an abrupt hiatus to China, like leaves Korea and goes back to China. And then in July of 2015, he releases his solo debut, TAO.
Yeah, this is where it gets
it gets dicey because now, as I said, like he went on a hiatus. They had just come back with Love Me Right. He was originally supposed to be in that song. His voice is on the track. Wasn't in promotions because he was injured. Leaves to go back to China. And then suddenly he's okay to just debut on his own. That's where it gets shady. So he debuts on his own in July. The very next month, he files a lawsuit with that same firm for the same reasons against SM to be released from his contract. But SM immediately countersued, claiming that Tao had prepped his solo debut secretly while still under contract with SM and therefore had like violated the contract and that he in fact owed them money because of it.
Yeah, and they won.
And they won that. They won that one. And so, but the shitty part about that one is that like the way it goes back and forth between Tao's representation and SM's representation is that like, so SM came out and was like, okay, you shouldn't have prepped this on your own, and because of that, like you need to pay us this amount of money and you have to pay us this amount of money by this day. Tao didn't pay them by that day, and that's why SM won that suit. But then Tao's representation came out and provided a lot of proof to say, we tried to pay SM this amount of money, and they didn't let us. Like, we sent emails, we have call transcripts, we have all this proof of every time we tried to get in touch with them to see how to pay this, and they kept putting us off so that we would miss the deadline, so that they would win this lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So it was like, he said, she said, who's to say what really happened? I don't know. But then, so once they won that suit, SM, I guess maybe they were trying their luck and they sued him again, for illegal activities. Basically, like all of the solo stuff that he did, they were claiming that he didn't have the right to promote himself under his own name.
Right. Because they still owned him at the time.
Right.
Or whatever.
Because he was still under contract with them. So anything released under his own name was quote unquote illegal. Tao won that one. The courts decided like he owns his own name. And so like if he released the solo debut TAO, like that's fine. That's his name. He can do whatever he wants with it. This lawsuit wasn't settled until this year, 2018. So 3 years later, basically, Tao lost the suit against the contract. He initially had claimed that the contract he was under was unfair, but SM was able to prove that it was a standard contract by the Korean Fair Trade Commission. And so there was nothing that the court could do. Like, it wasn't an unfair contract. It did follow the regulations of the FTC. And so Tao received a settlement very similar to Luhan's, where he's free to manage himself and promote and do whatever he wants outside of Korea and Japan. Mm-hmm. Within Korea and Japan, he has to be under SM Entertainment if he does anything. And no matter what he does, where he does it, they get about 20% of his profits from all of his solo activities.
He must be doing fine because he's
doing so
all
well.
the watches and all the cars and all
that enormous
he's so gross on
diamond
Instagram.
ring.
I love him so much, but he's so gross on Instagram.
I really want to unfollow him. He just posted this photo. He's here in LA driving cars that cost more money than I could ever even probably imagine having, and it was so gross. He posted this photo of himself in this car, and someone was like, "Ugh, nice color, bro," and he was like, "I got it in white too, bro," or something like that. And I was just like, "Ew,
yeah,
ew."
But I will say, out of all of this, one beautiful bright spot that I'll never forget is how wonderful Lay was. During all of this, because everybody was looking to him, just sort of waiting for him to pull his trigger, but he always consistently was like, I love EXO. I'm never leaving EXO. I don't want y'all to ever think I'm leaving because I'm never leaving. And he said in a lot of his posts, which I thought was so sweet, is I know you guys are worried about us, but I know this is harder on the fans than it is on anyone. So I want you all to take care of, he's the best boy in the whole world.
I know.
But yeah, he's the lone Chinese member of EXO.
Yep, he's the last one standing.
Barely.
And he's the missing member. He's the invisible member.
But I feel I know it's hard, and we don't know anything. This stuff isn't very transparent, and you only find out about it when it comes out in court documents. But even though we know for a fact that SM is taking a crazy amount of profits from Lay and the other Chinese members, that they're able to still do that, he must see some value in it, or he watched whatever happened to these other three guys, and he has a smarter lawyer who was nah, dude, we're just gonna ride this out, let them take their 30%, because they also will produce all his albums, and he does get to promote in Korea if he wants to, or whatever, because he stuck around and he didn't sue anybody.
Yeah, because he's still fully under contract. He kind of gets to profit from it in a way that the other members maybe don't, or at least in an easier way, as far as he didn't have to find new management, and
and he didn't
comes
have
back
to...
and is hey, I have these 6 songs, can you throw them on an album for me? SM's yeah, sure, here you go.
Yeah. We'd love to. Let me call Casper. We'll shoot a music video. It's all fine. But and I think he also was spared the the bad press and the loss of fans and stuff that happened around all of this.
Yeah.
There was a ton of infighting with EXO for years, because
there still is infighting with EXO.
People still are if you all 12, someday, people still talk about.
People are
all
still
12 of them.
OT12, crying over the loss of the 3 Chinese members. Some people are OT10, some people are OT8, and those people can jump off a cliff.
Yes.
Because don't you dare kick out Yixing.
Because Slay's really important to us.
But anyway, the EXO drama is never ending.
But it's also very odd. I don't know. It's one of those things that's weird because, at the time, there were so many people were claiming the abuse part of it was a thing that fans were very, very upset about. They don't let them sleep. They're getting hurt. How do we know that they're feeding them? And people were just
they're not getting proper medical attention when they are injured. They're having to work through their injuries, and then they get injured worse.
Which is a very big thing and is so important. People should be getting up in arms about. So I think that was especially painful to a lot of XOLs that Chris this year was LOL, I just quit because I hated their dumb music. People went through a lot thinking
it caused a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
For a lot of those fans.
Because I remember seeing comments of people being how do we know that they aren't beating them? People were coming up with the worst possible things they could in their mind, of what are they doing to EXO? And if that was happening, it is terrible. And it should, someone should get in trouble. But that years later, the people involved are saying nah, it was about money and me wanting to do what I want. That sucks.
Yeah, that's really shitty. But I will say on sort of the happier side of things, because we've mentioned a lot of different instances in which fans are worried that the idols are being mistreated. Like, I know when I first started learning about 17, there were all these claims of like abuse.
Yeah.
And so there have been certain steps that have been taken. Like, we've also mentioned several times in this podcast that like the Korean government does play a part in the entertainment industry.
Yes.
Like, they have certain ministries in their department that have partnerships with these big companies. And they do play a hand in like the Hallyu movement in general, because it is such an important piece of like Korean tourism. And so in March of 2017, the Korean Fair Trade Commission, this is the same commission that has like the so SM uses like a standard contract that is approved by the FTC. That is why Tao lost his lawsuit, right? Because the FTC said, yes, this contract
there's nothing
is fine.
out of the ordinary. This isn't. Because people like to use the word slave contract, which I honestly think is like slavery is a real thing and that still happens in this world and it's horrible. And like, I think that's probably too big of a word.
I totally agree for reasons that we don't even have to get into right now. I agree. I think it's an inappropriate phrase, inappropriate choice of words. But I will say that like, I think the perpetuation of that phrase and of that like idea that these idols were suffering under these quote unquote slave contracts, like that is what sort of maybe pushed the Fair Trade Commission to be like, hey, let's look into these companies and like see what these contracts are all about. So in March of last year, 2017, the Fair Trade Commission basically looked into 6 different clauses in the contracts of 8 different companies, including the big 3. So it was JYP, SM, YG, as well as Cube, Lowen Entertainment, FNC, Jellyfish Entertainment, and DSP Media. Okay. So all 8 of these big companies, they did in fact revise all of these claims. So the first was like limiting the jurisdiction of certain lawsuits to the Seoul Central District Court, meaning like these lawsuits could only be tried in Seoul. The FTC was like, no, like, you know, if a Chinese member is in China and they need to file their lawsuit, like it doesn't matter if they're not in Seoul. That was one of them. Another one was like canceling a contract for ambiguous reasons, like companies are no longer allowed to do that. They're also no longer allowed to cancel a contract without notice. They have to provide their artists with significant notice. They cannot force a renewal after the expiration of a contract. Like there were certain instances where I know the article I was reading used JYP as an example where a contract would expire and the company kind of like forcefully persuaded the artist to renew it. And then they also eliminated excessive cancellation fees, basically, or penalty fees, which was a really big deal. I think that's probably like one of the things that came up.
I brought it up in the TVXQ that it was going to bankrupt them if
they. So basically what they used to be, and so what I'm saying is that companies are not allowed to do this anymore, but they used to be able to say like, if you leave your contract, if you violate your contract and you leave us before your contract is up, we will charge you an exorbitant amount of money as a penalty fee for breaking that contract, and it will be more than you ever made with us, and so like it will bankrupt you. They're not allowed to do that anymore. So the Fair Trade Commission did like revise these like 6 different clauses. I don't think I named all 6, but like I hit the big ones. So there have been like significant positive changes made in like making sure that these contracts are a little bit more reasonable.
Well, that's good. That's hopeful. That's all I want. Like we talk about all the time that like K-pop is like a new industry. And like, unfortunately, I feel like with kind of all things, when there's laws and rules and whatever, the only way they get changed is for someone to stand up in front of the court and be like, this happened and it's not fair. And then they have to, you know, big. So as much as this was like, these things were this TVXQ and EXO things were very painful for like the fans and the people and the artists themselves, like they ushered in change for groups going forward forever. And one last thing before we wrap this up, like another little bit of contract dispute that's been in the news lately, so I wanted to bring it up. is just this idea of like trademarks and the company sort of owning the group altogether. So Beast is an example of this. Beast was one of Cube's boy bands. They were around for a long time. And in April 2016, Hyunsung, who was that guy who was supposed to be in Big Bang and didn't debut with Big Bang, and he was in Troublemaker with Hyuna. Cube just basically told Beast, like, he's leaving. He doesn't like making music with you guys anymore. He wants to make his own music. So he's going to go solo, and you guys can be Beast without him. Beast was like, that sucks. So they, like, together decided they wanted to keep going, but they didn't want to be with Cube because, like, it was very clear who they were siding with in that case. So they started their own label called Around Us Entertainment, but they had to come out as they are now called Highlight.
And they don't have that member in.
He's still under Cube Entertainment, but he like doesn't do anything. And like when Hyuna was saying that when she announced that they were doing another Triple H comeback, people were like, what about Troublemaker? Will we ever get Troublemaker back? And like, no, you're not going to get Troublemaker back, guys. And I think we all know why. But Beast like knew that they couldn't be Beast because Cube owns Beast, and that it would probably bankrupt them, or like any money that they had to start this company, they couldn't fight over the name Beast. So they decided to be Highlight, which is a little like, like a hump to get over. Like they have a new name now, which is kind of weird. So the other way that this can go is what's happening with Tiara right now, where there are now only 4 members of Tiara left. Over the years, they've lost everyone. In December 2017, the remaining 4 members were like, we're done. They left their company, MBK. And right after they left, MBK filed a trademark on the name Tiara, which everybody decided was petty and like a bitchy thing to do.
Yeah.
So right now, Tiara is stuck in this weird limbo where they're not allowed, where the 4 of them want to try to like hold on to their fans and like keep being Tiara, but MBK is petitioning the court for this name Tiara. They've already lost once and refiled the case, but Korean law or whatever, the copyright law says they get to make their case 4 times. So this could keep going for years until Tiara and they might lose at some point. So that's why I think Beast/Highlight decided to just go with a rebrand, because it's not. Is it worth it to like fight over a name? But like those are the kinds of things that can happen because like the companies, they own it all.
Yeah, they really do own it all. And wasn't there something like, didn't the girls of Girls' Generation come out and say something about like the name Girls' Generation and how that they like Girls' Generation would never be over? And
yeah, I think they said something. I wish I like had it in front of me, but I swear that they said something that because this was a case, Girls' Generation was a case of all of the girls' contracts were up for renewal. 3 of them were like, no, not going to renew this time. I have other things to do. Everybody else renewed. But I think from what I heard, and this could have been just them saying we're willing to fight. I don't know if SM promised them that they would get to keep their name, or if they all very publicly were like, we won't let them take our name from us. It hasn't like come up yet because like Tiffany's doing solo work and everybody's like fine. But I guess we could see if they ever wanted to do a reunion tour, if SM would fight them on it or not. Like, I don't know.
If the girls who left wanted to join in
and do like a Girls' Generation, like I don't know. It's all kind of
we'll have to keep an eye out and see
what
how
happens.
that plays out.
Yeah, because I wonder if SNSD Girls' Generation is the kind of group that has enough clout, fame, power, whatever.
Yeah.
That like it wouldn't be worth SM's time to fight them on it, or if SM did work something out with them that is like, you guys can promote as SNSD if you want to, but we get X amount.
Like, I'm sure that that's whatever. I'm sure that that's a factor into it.
But I think all of this stuff has sort of, I assume, probably made like all of the K-pop kids just like more aware of the kinds of things that they like could get themselves into. And like I hope they all do have like good lawyers, but that seems to be like, I think unfortunately a lot of these things affect, like you were saying in last week's episode, these like lower tier companies, these kids who are never going to make any money and never have any say for themselves. Like these two cases were huge because huge groups were involved, which meant there was enough money at stake for people to pay attention.
Yeah. And it was SM. It's one of the big three companies. Like, not only is this a massively popular group, but this is also a massively successful company that has like a lot of clout, and it's difficult to go against them.
Yes.
You know, like if it was a group from a much smaller label, then maybe it like wouldn't have been such a newsworthy.
No, totally,
case.
totally. But yeah, it seems like one of those things that, you know, people just, that you have to like we've said before, like earn your freedom. Like Shiny has said multiple times that like the last 2 contracts that they signed, that they've been like very demanding about like, excuse me, we're Shiny and like we're gonna get exactly what we want, and that they have like a ton of say in how their careers go. But that's probably only because
They're
of how
Shiny.
much money have made SM.
Yeah, like once you become a group that has sway, it's like, you know, this whole Hyuna Pentagon thing. Like, obviously, Hyuna's not going to have any kind of like controversy or punishment for like coming out publicly with a relationship, but like this lesser known dude, pull him from the promotions.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine. So,
Yeah,
you know,
so it's
once you
all-
have that reputation.
Yeah, then you can do what you want. But like, I don't know. It's all just very interesting. And I hope, my only hope is that like the shadiest and worst companies get like outed for what they are and they all fail, because like, how dare they?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, as much, we've said this before, like as much as companies are like quote unquote evil, like it's just kind of like the way of the world. Like it's business. Like it would be so nice if it was all just butterflies and rainbows and people being creative, but like it's
not.
business, man. And like a lot of people's money and time like goes into things, and like way more than you think about. Like so much of like capitalist like business in general just like runs on debt and like fake money. Like people, you know, getting money from investors and spending $40 million and making nothing. Like, and it's all just like a gamble. Hooray. Like it's a crazy mess, and I wouldn't want any part of it.
Me either. Me either. Glad I don't work in the business sector. I don't have a brain for it.
Yeah, me either. So shout out to all the lawyers out there. If any of you are out there are in law school, you should find out how you can help out idols and make sure they have good contracts.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, shout out to all the lawyers, but also shout out to all the lawyers that are specifically looking out for our beautiful, precious idols.
Yes.
Thanks to you guys.
Thanks, y'all. So that was our long promised contract disputes. Now you know how it went down.
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody feel educated now? I sure do. Anyway, we'll be back with our random game.
Woo!
And we're back. And today, the random number generator picked a very old group that we have seen in the flesh before.
Yes, a gift of the magic of KCON.
Yeah, and that group is Turbo. We mentioned them briefly in our first generation episode because they
Jungkook
were
is hot.
Yes. Kim Jong-kook from Running Man is one of the members of Turbo. He's like a giant, like Greek god. Like
He's
just,
so
like,
buff.
He's so buff,
He's just like very wide.
and his jaw is so square, but he has the smallest smallest eyes. Anyway, he was in a duo called Turbo,
Yes.
and we mentioned in the first generation episode that they were formed to be like a competitor to Deuce, but someone in Deuce died. So then they
Yes. Shortly after Turbo's debut.
Yeah.
And
did
so
they have
like
something to do with it? Remember, it was mysterious.
it was a mysterious death.
No,
that
I'm sorry,
is
I'm
true.
not. I'm
But-
not saying Turbo had anything to do with anyone dying.
And like after that guy's death, Turbo was sort of like, because they were making like dance music, and that's why they were sort of competing against Deuce. And so once the member of Deuce passed away and Deuce sort of dissolved, then Turbo was like the kings of dance music for K-pop in the late 1990s.
Yeah, so they made like cool dance music, and it was Jungkook and this guy Jungnam for the first 3 years. In 1999, Jungnam left because he was like unable to reconcile his differences with the management, and he joined a 5-member boy band called Snap. So Jungkook needed to find a new partner, and he found this Californian kid named Mikey.
Yep, who had previously moved to Korea with hopes of being a star.
Yeah.
And so the two of them continued with Turbo for quite a while.
Yeah, and one big thing that I wrote down to mention in our Generation 1 episode, but it didn't come up organically, is that in like 1998, they almost had their careers totally ruined because Jungkook at this massive, like, concert for Korea that was being watched all over the world, and there were diplomats in the audience, and it was like a big deal. He had gotten in like a fight with his manager or the sound guy or something at rehearsal, so he decided when it was their turn that he was just gonna fold his arms and not sing. So like he stood in protest, which resulted in him being banned from appearing on television for a year.
Oof.
Couldn't go on TV. Because how dare, people couldn't believe he was so rude. And I honestly, like, knowing him now and how famous he is, I can't believe he would, like, that he's the kind of, like, that he would throw a fit like that. It's really crazy.
It is pretty crazy. It is pretty nuts, like, to just sit there or to just stand there in front of all those people and, like, pout. Like, I mean, I don't know why he did it, but it seems like it's a bold move.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
a bold move. So
then they disbanded officially in 2000 because their contracts ran out. But then in 2015,
because their contracts ran out and because Mikey's visa expired.
Oh no. Yeah, so they had to do that. But then in 2015, all 3 members, so the original guy and the other 2 guys, reunited as a 3-member Turbo, did like a tour of like the Turbo comeback tour, and we saw them at KCON as like a surprise special guest.
Stage in 2016.
Yes.
So it was the following year.
Yeah, so they did their little bit of like a return tour, and
so now all 3 of the members, like Turbo is technically still a group today, and it currently has 3 members.
It's a 3-member group. Yeah, so we were looking because like we've done before with these pre-YouTube bands, it feels unfair to let view count decide what we watch. So they had an album out in
2000.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so, because it was like
99.
Oh, okay.
In October 99, they came out with an album called Email My Heart that like went to number 3. So we're going to watch the music video for the title track off of Email My Heart, which is Cyber Lover.
Oh my God. It makes me think of that, what's that NSYNC song?
Digital Get Down.
Digital Get Down.
Yeah.
I hope that this is similar.
20,000 miles away and I can see ya, and baby, you can see me. That song was crazy. I remember my mom not liking me listening to it.
I remember listening to it as a child and being like, this song is inappropriate.
Yeah, just knew. So I wonder if Cyber Lover is also going to be inappropriate. The screen grab for the music video is like a girl on a webcam, so I'm a little scared.
I know, but I'm going to look up the lyrics while you pull this up.
Okay, so from the year 2000, K-pop 2000 is the name of this channel. Anyway, this was 1999, I guess. So here comes Turbo Cyber Lover. Okay. Oh, Jungkook was working on something, and then they all got electric shocked.
Oh, did they get sucked into the computer?
Oh, they did.
They did. That's fun. So they got like sucked into the computers, and now they're watching the people like play at a PC bong.
Yes, because they like went in.
So the like pretty girl that's in the screen cap is like a girl that's at this PC play cafe playing video games. Or maybe she's just chatting with someone.
I mean, it really, really looks like 1999. That's the one thing I can say for
She's
super
got those
sure.
chunky highlights.
Oh, I wanted those chunky highlights. I used to put my son in my hair just to have those chunky highlights. I wish I could read Korean faster to read the chats that are showing up on the screen, but they're too fast.
Ugh, the song is so old, nobody's translated
Haha,
the
me
lyrics.
too. I'm at the PC bong. Hey, I could read one of them fast enough. But it's like they're standing around in like a giant what's the word microchip? Like it's like all the wires and stuff, but it's big around them.
When it comes to the like box music video part of it, they're standing on a computer chip.
They're wearing all white or all black and like leather gloves. Jungkook's hair is very bleached, and the other guy has that HOT bowl haircut that's so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Mickey, because this is Mickey time.
And he has that super chunky highlights too. He almost has like Cruella de Vil hair.
I think his highlights look fake. They look like the clip-in kind from Forever.
Yeah, because they're like
Limited
underneath.
too. And they're so white.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this song is fun, but also I wonder, it feels slightly dated for 99, but like maybe not.
For 1999, yeah, maybe it is a little bit dated.
What have you found anything good in the lyrics?
No, because nobody's translated the lyrics.
Because it's
lyrics
too old.
are so
God.
old. The only thing that I can find is like one part that says, I met a girl inside, I fell in love inside, I want to be her lover, I want to love forever.
Okay, so maybe it really is just about like falling in love in a chat room or something with a girl you don't really like. The cyber lover part is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just about like meeting someone online. A love story.
Are they in the same
modern
room?
age.
Will they see each other?
Oh, they were in the same room.
Oh, their heads are smoking with really
CGI
fake CGI smoke. Huh, that was weird. Back to work.
Back to fixing this computer. Like, I know what I'm doing.
Wow, Turbo.
Well, that was Turbo.
It was.
Very 90s.
That's exactly
K-pop.
what I like remember them sounding like, because I feel like it comes up a lot on Running Man, especially if they're doing like a karaoke challenge episode or whatever. People love to like pull up Turbo songs, like just to make him do the old dances and stuff. And that's what they all sound like in my mind, like over electronic and like bouncy.
Yeah. Very bouncy.
So cool for you, Turbo. It's always fun to get a really old group. I like it.
Nice to see you again, boys.
Nice to see you. So, weekly recommendations. I think it's your turn to go first.
It is my turn. And in the spirit of continuing to promote those mid-level company groups, those groups that aren't super well-known or popular, I dug into my phone to see, like, okay, who's a group that I don't know much of, but I like that song.
Right.
So I picked Teen Top, which is a group that I know nothing about, other than the fact that I really like their song, which is called Confusing. And it is from an EP from 2015 called Natural Born Teen Top.
Okay.
The song is really like bubbly and bright. It's very positive and it puts me in a good mood. I think it's very catchy. The live performance of it isn't like super exciting because if I remember correctly, this is one of those songs that they just sing like standing around. They don't actually like dance to it or anything. But I like it a lot. And so Teen Top, they're still around. They're still making music. They just released a music video this year and I hope that they have continued success.
Wonderful. I also, on a very similar note, I was trying to think of what to recommend this week. And since we bank episodes, I don't know, there's probably something new out by the time you're hearing this that I would like to recommend. But I don't know. I'm here in the past where it's not out yet. So I reached back into what are some of my favorite things that have come out so far this year that people might not have heard. And there's this group called Halo. I know nothing about them. I'll just be straight up honest. I thought that this song was their debut song, but they've apparently been around for 3 years, but they seem to mostly promote in Japan, so it's not my fault that I didn't know about them. But Halo has this song called OMG. Oh my God. The chorus is oh my God, but the song is OMG. And it is just a banger. It's just such a good disco-y dance song. It's really, really fun, and the music video is really simple. It's just all of them dancing on a roof with jackets with no shirt underneath, which I love that look, of course. So it's low budge. I think this is like we said, a lower rung K-pop company and group, but this is such a good song. So if you're looking for some sort of off the radar K-pop, I can't recommend this song highly enough. So Halo, OMG.
Awesome.
Yay. So that's it for this week. And as always, you can find us at AMA K-Pop Pod on Instagram and Twitter, amakpoppod.tumblr.com for episode links, amakpoppod@gmail.com if you want to send us an email. And we are on YouTube if you like to watch the podcast. I mean, it's not video.
It's not anything
it's
you
just
can
the album art
watch.
and the video and the podcast plays. But some people are YouTube people. Maybe you have YouTube Red and it's easier to queue it up that way or whatever. We're there if you want it. And then that's it. And we'll be back next time and we'll see you guys then.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Chonghyun, you're our inspiration.